Hi, this is Noma Dimitri from a very tiny place, somewhere very high up in the French Alps. I wanted to show you today why I love these places and to tell you a couple of things about avalanches. First of all, let me show you what's around me. As you see, there are high mountains over there that have relatively a small amount of snow for this season. But the thing that I really love here is number one, the fact that when you're in these places, they're dotted with villages. Like, can you see the steeple? Yeah, you can see the steeple of a church and some villages down here. Um, and so it is a combination of like very wild landscape and continuous human habitation in the form of these villages that still exist nowadays, many of them with buildings dating all the way back to the 15th century. And these little villages are always self-contained, tiny, because they used to be fields, and sometimes they still are, fields all around. So the villages are all gathered, usually around the church, in a small, compact place. They're not ranches. They're not like in Nevada or elsewhere in the United States. They're just small enclaves where houses often even share walls. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The other thing, my very favorite thing in terms of nature, is the small narrow valleys. This is one of them right over here, and you can see what's going on. There's a little village there, and then there's a road that goes right in there in the shadowy part. And then the road dead ends, and then there's nothing. There's just mountain, high alpine mountains, as you can see, very tall peaks all around. And over here, where this valley ends, you can find usually, there's always, of course, a river, because all these valleys are made by rivers. So the water falls from all these mountains, gets gathered up, and it gets channeled down this particular valley, and there's a river that goes down. Somewhere over here, usually, there is a waterfall that brings the water down, and then this valley, the river, runs down through here and usually ends up joining, oops, there's a car passing, I hope they're not going to crash me. Okay, the car is gone. And usually it's going to join a larger valley with a larger river, and all these rivers are kind of falling down these mountains, and they create these flat parts that are beautiful, and they provided people of other centuries with the irrigation needed to cultivate their meager fields and eke out an existence in these godforsaken, faraway places that they wanted to live in. Why did they want to live here? Because they were independent, because they liked, they had no means to get land elsewhere, so they ended up here, but very often because they had a love like mine for this kind of place. So how do you explore these kind of places? There are two ways. You either put on your snowshoes and you kind of start going up, or you take any number of specially adapted skis, which I also love, namely ski randonnée, which means that you put underneath a pair of skis, you put some kind of resistance, some kind of Velcro, which attaches itself to the snow, and then you can go up the mountain with the skis using this Velcro without sliding downward. And then there are roads that pass through this, so you can actually just walk around normally and enjoy this fantastic landscape. Now, while you're enjoying all this, there's one danger. We're in Europe, so there are no wolves practically, there are no bears, there's no animal that's going to threaten you, and the people here, the villagers, are not armed. They don't have Kalashnikovs, not like America or the situation that you see right now in Oregon. The people do not have guns, really. And I mean, they have guns for hunting sometimes, but not people, usually wild boar or things like that, during the hunting season only. So you're safe from every element except one, and that is the element of avalanche. Avalanches have been getting a lot of press, especially this season, because there's a lot of deaths right now in these very mountains due to avalanches. So what should we know about avalanches? Avalanches are events that occur based on a number of factors. They involve the quality of the snow and the ice that is formed, and they involve the particular weather of the particular day when you're out. So there are days in which there is an avalanche alert. That means it is very likely that an avalanche will start rolling down a mountain, and there are days when it's much safer and you can pretty much go anywhere. You're never entirely safe. It's always nature, and nature has surprises. But there are safer days and less safe days. And then there are the conditions of the snow, and very importantly, the shape of the mountain. So if a mountain, let's take this particular mountain, okay? If a mountain is really, really steep, as you can see these rocks are, if it's really steep, then it can't hold snow. If it can't hold that much snow, or it can hold a little bit of snow, if it can't hold that much snow, that means that the snow cannot accumulate, that means it cannot create an avalanche. So when you're around very, very steep valleys with mountains that are very steep, such as this ones, or such as these ones over here, oof, you can hardly see them, voila, over here. When they're really, really steep, you have nothing to worry about. Okay, that's one. Number two, avalanches occur in places again and again. So usually in similar places. So when there is an avalanche, you know, it's just a ton of snow on a bed of ice that's kind of rolling down and taking everything with it. When I say everything with it, that means all the trees, all the forest, and all the rocks. Okay, so when you see a mountainside like this one, which is full of trees, that's why it's dark here and there's not enough snow, that means there hasn't been an avalanche there for, well, you estimate the life of these conifers, that to me they look like they can be anywhere from 70 to 100 years old. That means there has not been an avalanche here for 70 to 100 years old. So if I want to walk down there beneath this forest, I mean, you know, to think that there hasn't been an avalanche there for a century, and all of a sudden, just on the day that I'll be walking down there, there's going to be an avalanche that's going to kill me, it's a little bit narcissistic. It's probably not going to happen. So you're safe in places like this, okay? The places where avalanches form are more or less, so basically if you're seeing a lot of trees on a slope, then you're not going to have an avalanche. The places that avalanches form are in places that do not have such a great gradient. They're not so steep, in mountains that are not so steep, that allow something like over here, that allow a lot of snow to accumulate. The snow accumulates, then gets compacted with its own weight, and this compaction creates ice. So basically you're compacting snow, it's like making an igloo. The compacted snow becomes ice, and that ice gets frozen and gets supported by the underlying structure, which is usually rocks because we're on the high mountains. So that there are conditions under which that snow starts getting and the weight of this entire thing. So imagine there's a slab of ice supporting all this snow, tremendous amount of weight. There is a moment when that weight defeats the power of friction and attraction and the bonds between the ice and the underlying rocks, and the thing gets launched. Once it gets launched, there's nothing that can stop it. Absolutely nothing. No tree, no rock, nor anything else. It's going to take an entire mountainside with it, and you along with it if you happen to have the bad luck to be on its way. So that is my little kind of elementary introductory course on beautiful alpine valleys, how you can explore them, and the largest danger you're facing when you explore them, which is avalanches. Happy trails and happy mountain hiking. Nomad Dimitri from the French Alps. Bye-bye.